With fire came disparity. Light and dark, strength and weakness. Strength was pitted against strength. It was measured, consolidated, organized. Strength became power, and power reigned. And with power came those to wield it. Gwyn was very close to our typical depictions of God. He defeated the everlasting dragons and carved change from a gray, unchanging, and eternal landscape. He reshaped the world in his own image. He was power incarnate. And his use of power brought form to the unformed. Early in humanity's history, we can spot a fair number of Gwyn-likes. Narmer, who was the first known king of Egypt. He united warring chiefdoms to create one of the first known centralized states. Hammurabi, whose code created the basis for modern law and stability at the cost of personal freedom. Augustus Caesar, who ended a near century of sporadic civil war in the founding Roman Republic and created the Roman Empire. The list goes on and on. Kingdoms were built. Societies rose and fell. Some withstood, but fires fade. The wielders of power longed to be eternal, longed to upset the cycle of creation and decay, longed to prevent the natural passage of the torch. So when the fire began to sputter and fade, they provided kindling in the form of their own humanity, in the form of their soul. In truth, while these depictions of heroism and unification of warring factions sound very nice on paper, in reality they look a lot like people getting maimed horribly and pissing themselves while begging to see their families again. In much the same way, preserving stability once it's been forged from chaos involves a lot of the same. Systems of law have many victims alongside the many lives it saves through prevention. Consolidation of power requires the continued repression of differing views on its use. This hardens the mind of those who wield it. It creates cold and paranoid perspectives. And lesser rulers will eventually balk under the pressure and work only to preserve what's closest to themselves, a focus on the greater good slowly eroding into humanity's base state. Tribalism. A sick fire burned on. It festered and told tales of itself, justified its existence, deified its purpose, vilified its beholders, convincing them of their own impurity and urging them to continue the cycle. Monuments erected in honor of a calamity, shrines to festering wounds on the fabric of time, heroes led astray, dying as pawns. The lords became ashen idols, gods in name alone. Their thrones stood tall, but they cast no shadows. Their dominion was not prosperity, but a pyre. They called it salvation, they called it duty, they called it the way things have always been, and the people, afraid of an unknown darkness, knelt before a fire that provided no warmth and fed it their own flesh. Change. There's nothing that humanity rages against so much as change. Even when the continuance of what is simply perpetuates misery, the unknown is our greatest and oldest fear. It's what keeps people in awful relationships or working at companies that treat them like trash. It's why we worship the same gods whose words justified the existence of slaves and idolize those who keep their boots at our neck. The devil you know. And yet the fire still wanes. Their thrones tarnish and rust, their minds fracture and weaken. The people who've heard the promise of salvation for so long begin to see not gods but monsters. Hope becomes fear and delusion. Fear for some of the darkness that they know will come, and others the delusion that those responsible for the shabby state of their reality may yet deign to save them. With the state of reality worsening, so too does the mythos weaken. Their gilded promises, their plated lies. The heroes no longer line up for service. They take up arms for themselves and those they love. And so they come to you, a wretch, rotting in the confines of the cells they placed you in. How fortunate that you're granted divine purpose. How fortunate. And the divinity of the purpose becomes increasingly obscure as you trek through the monstrous world that you're trying to preserve. And when you reach a place that does seem to meet the description, that does shine with the divine light of a salvation promised to you in your divine quest, something doesn't seem right. Gilded. Veneered. Another lie. As you approach the moment that decides your destiny, you realize this perfectly matches what you found to be the truth of why you're here. An ashen void outside of time and space, a monument to a great fire that once burned. Guarded by a specter, a husk of himself, humanity all but devoured by the continuance of the flame. I notice a lot of complaints surrounding Gwyn being so easy, and it's true compared to a lot of the borderline sadistic bosses in the FromSoft roster. Gwyn does not rank very high in difficulty, even outside of the parry method, which knocks him to the pathetically easy variety, big shield and high poise, and he's essentially toast as well. And this fits him to a T, because the moment he decided to stop the natural progression, he was doomed. And the weakness of character that led him to do such a thing would grow outside of his control. And yet, you stand at the fire, in its kiln. It's small, and it'd be so simple to just snuff it out. But the fear lingers. The unknown stretches before you, an abyss deeper than any chasm you've crossed. You are not the first to stand here. You won't be the last. How many before you felt this same pull? They feel the embers fading and fear what lay beyond. Fear a world untethered from the fire's light. Fear that without it, all that was would mean nothing. Better the devil that you know. And so they burned. Not in reverence, not in hope, but in fear. And so you burn too. The cyclical nature of humanity's pain is a puzzling thing to be a part of. We continuously roll back into the same horrendous systems of survival, progressing only from the survival of the fittest to the thriving of the fittest. Things are approaching a point where a choice will be made. There will come a day where the provided labor of a human being, be it intellectual or physical, will only possess value and creativity. As given enough time, there's nothing that a robot cannot do better than us, outside of create the new. What will we do then? How then will those in power convince us of their deserving of more, if all that matters is contribution and not our monetary value? How will they pit us against each other when there's no threat of scarcity? What does a world look like beyond survival? Time churned forward, ever wilting. The cycle continues. Kings and pawns, thrones and pyres, faces change, names are forgotten, but the fear remains. Over and over, the fire is kindled, the world repainted, but never remade. Thrones always rust, the fire always fades. You find yourself at the kiln again, and you face Gwyn, Ludleth Yorm, the chosen undead, a past life but you prevail, and once more you stand in front of the flame. And this time, not just for yourself, but for every soul that will walk beyond you, for every wretch cast into servitude and told it is their fate, for every throne that will one day crumble, every empire that will one day burn, for every hand that has ever trembled before a dying light, too afraid to see what lies beyond the dark. You let the embers turn to ash and end the age of gods and kings.
Ashen One, hearest thou my voice still?